You've done it again. You're standing directly in front of someone you've met at least 3 times, maybe 4, and their name is just gone, not hovering at the tip of your tongue, not buried somewhere deep and retrievable, just absent, cleanly, completely absent. Like it was never filed anywhere in the first place. And the worst part isn't even the forgetting. It's the next 12 seconds of pure improvised theater you're about to perform. Subtly angling your body toward the door, desperately hoping someone else in the room says their name first. Praying their phone rings. Considering briefly whether a small fire would be too much to ask for right now. We've all been there. But the people who live here, who chronically, consistently, reliably forget names, are not careless. They are not rude. And they are almost certainly not as unintelligent as the quiet voice inside them has been suggesting for years. There is something very specific happening in their brains, and once you understand it, you will never carry that guilt the same way again. So let's start at the moment it actually happens. When you meet someone new, your brain is not relaxing. It is working at full capacity. It is reading their face, registering their tone of voice, calculating the social context, and figuring out where you fit inside it. Deciding whether this person likes you, whether you even like them. Preparing what you are going to say next before they have even finished their sentence. Your working memory, the short-term holding space in your prefrontal cortex, is juggling 6 things simultaneously. And into that exact moment of cognitive overload, someone hands you a single arbitrary sound, their name. Hi, I'm Kevin. Kevin. Okay, Kevin doesn't mean anything. It doesn't connect to anything you already know. It doesn't trigger an image, a feeling, a story, or a concept. It just floats there, unattached, in a brain that is genuinely too busy to babysit it. Psychologists actually have a name for this. In 1987, researchers McQueenie and Ellis published a study demonstrating what became known as the Baker-Baker paradox. They told one group of participants that a person in a photo was a baker by profession. They told a separate group that the same person's last name was Baker. Days later, the people who learned the occupation remembered it far more easily than those who learned it as a name. Same word, completely different retention. Because the word baker as a job activates an entire web of associations: flour, warmth, early mornings, bread rising in the oven. As a name, it activates nothing. It floats there, rootless. Names by their very nature are semantically empty. And your brain, efficient machine that it is, preferentially holds on to things that carry meaning. Here's where it gets interesting. Think about the last significant event you attended: a funeral, a wedding, a reunion. You probably remember the smell of the room, the specific quality of the silence before someone spoke, who cried unexpectedly, a single sentence someone said that landed somewhere deep in your chest. You do not remember what was printed on the program, because your brain made a decision without consulting you about what mattered. And it was not the printed text. It never is. Names are the program. Everything else about a person is the event itself. But here is the part that tends to get a little uncomfortable, because it runs deeper than most people want to admit. A significant number of chronic name forgetters are people who are intensely inside their own heads during social interactions, not out of arrogance but out of anxiety. While the other person is introducing themselves, there is an entire internal monologue running at full volume. Am I making enough eye contact right now? Is this handshake too firm? Did I just accidentally interrupt them? The name enters for a brief moment, and then the internal narration bulldozes straight over it, and it is gone before it ever had a chance to settle. This is actually documented. There is a phenomenon called the next in line effect, first identified by psychologist Malcolm Brenner in 1973. People who are waiting for their turn to speak in a group show dramatically reduced memory for what the person directly before them said, because mentally they had already moved on. They were rehearsing, editing themselves in real time. And people who live with social anxiety, or even just a hyperactive self-awareness, are essentially stuck in that mode permanently, never quite fully here, always half a step ahead into what comes next, which means the exact moment a name is offered to them, they are already somewhere else. If that is you, here is the reframe. You do not have a memory problem. You have a preoccupation problem. Those are not the same thing. Now, before the comment section starts filling up, there is something worth saying about the people on the other end of this, the ones whose names keep getting forgotten, because the emotional sting of it is real, and it would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. Having your name forgotten, especially repeatedly, lands like a quiet message. You did not matter enough to stick. That is how it feels, even when it is completely wrong. The person who forgot your name probably replayed the conversation afterward. They remember what you said about your sister, the specific way you laughed, the odd take you had that no one else in the room shared. They were present for all of it. They were just not quite present for the name part. And this is where most people fundamentally misunderstand how memory actually works. It is not a recording device. Your brain does not store experiences the way a hard drive stores files. It stores impressions, emotions, patterns, fragments, and it prioritizes ruthlessly. High emotion, stored. Surprising, stored. Connected to something already known, stored. One arbitrary syllable handed to you at the exact moment you were trying to seem like a normal human being in front of a stranger. Good luck. But here is what nobody tells you about this. People who forget names easily tend to share something else. They are almost always highly associative thinkers. Their memory is richly contextual. They remember stories, feelings, the look on someone's face when they said something that actually mattered. Ask them what someone was wearing at a party 3 years ago, and they might actually be able to tell you. Ask them the name of the person standing next to them at that same party, and there is a very real chance it is gone, because their brain was busy cataloging everything except the label. This shows up in patterns that go beyond just people. These are often the same people who remember a film in vivid detail but cannot recall the title, who remember exactly where they were when they heard a song for the first time but cannot name the artist, who could tell you the entire plot of a book from a decade ago and cannot tell you what it was called. It is not a flaw in the architecture. It is a particular kind of architecture. One that is better suited to storytelling, to emotional attunement, to the kind of listening that makes people feel genuinely seen, and less suited to the specific mechanical task of retaining what someone was called in the moment they were handed to you under social pressure. And now let us talk about something that comes up endlessly in conversations about this: the dog. People who forget names will, in the same breath, remember a neighbor's dog's name without any effort at all. Biscuit, Mango, Captain Fluffernugton III. No problem. And the reason is exactly what you would expect by now. The dog bounded over. There was warmth. There was a reaction. There was an immediate emotional event that fused the name to a feeling. The neighbor just said hi. The neighbor's name never got that kind of welcome in the brain. There are also people who carry this into long-term relationships in ways that feel genuinely alarming. People who have worked alongside someone for 3 years and suddenly, in the middle of a Tuesday, cannot pull up their name. People who go to introduce a close friend at a party and experience a complete and total blank. This is not the onset of decline. This is what happens when a brain that runs on meaning and emotion is asked to retrieve a label without a trigger. The information is there. It is just stored behind a door that needs an emotional key to open. Someone says the name, and immediately, of course, there it is. But cold retrieval on demand, without any contextual cue, fails. Here is the twist. This kind of memory actually has a structural advantage that rarely gets talked about. When these people do form a lasting connection with someone, when they know someone well enough that the name finally sticks, they tend to retain an enormous amount about that person. The history, the texture, the details that most people let fade. The forgetting is not a sign of how little they notice. It is almost the inverse. They notice everything except the part that society decided should come first. None of this means that working on it is pointless. Repeating someone's name back immediately when you meet them, connecting it to someone you already know, creating a single image that links the face to the sound. These strategies work because they do manually what the brain refuses to do automatically. They build the association that was not there. They give Kevin a context. They give the name somewhere to live. But the shame spiral, the quiet, long-term belief that forgetting names makes you inattentive, self-absorbed, or indifferent to the people around you, that part is simply not true. And it is worth saying clearly, because a lot of people carry it without ever examining whether it actually fits. You are not absent. You are not dismissive. You are someone whose brain prioritizes meaning over labels, gets overtaken by its own internal weather, and sometimes fails at the single least interesting thing about a person, the arbitrary sound their parents chose for them before they had done a single thing worth remembering. The name was always the least of it. What you actually remember about people, the real things, the texture of who they are, that part is still there. It has been there the whole time. And if any of this felt uncomfortably familiar, subscribe. There is a lot more of this kind of depth to explore. The next video is going to hit closer to home than this one did. I will see you there.